7 o'clock, I'd like to call this meeting of the Ripon Area Fire District Board to order. And roll call, Gary Page.
Here.
Doug Iverson.
Here.
Jonathan Godsky.
Here.
Barry Vandenberg.
Here.
Jolene Schatzinger.
Here.
And me, Mike Wargula. And we have Alan Sorensen in Zoom. So I'd like to see for a motion to approve the agenda or make any corrections or additions.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes, thank you. Looking for any public comment. Anybody has anything? Okay. Move on to the approval of the secretary's report. Do you have anything, Doug?
I'd just like to report, we're talking about, we've been advised to close our accounts at Horicon and reopen them with different account numbers. And I've been trying to coordinate that with Barb because she is doing checks still. And it kind of depends upon how many checks she issues a month, whether it's worth doing the ACH, sending out that way, or with the check. So I'm sorry, I've been busy, but I'm still working on it with her and with the bank. And then I did redo the minutes for October 31st when we voted to approve the purchase of the truck. The dollar amount that we were voting on needed to be in there. I went back and looked at the minutes on the Ripon channel YouTube, and the price of $885,000 was explicitly stated by our board president in an exchange with Gary Page here. So I corrected those minutes. Those are included, and those were necessary to move forward with the purchase. That's all I have to report right now.
You need to approve the minutes.
Oh, yes.
Working on that.
We're not there.
So I was just going to say, and look for a motion to approve the secretary's report, the minutes from January 3rd and from the correction of October 31st.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to the treasurer's report. Review the accounts payable. I don't know if there's anything new or anything that's needs to be brought to our attention.
I don't have anything under A. I don't know, Doug, if you have anything in the treasurer's report?
No, I don't have anything new to discuss.
I think it's early in the year, so it's 1 month of
See,
data,
there's
so it's
a
tough to...
couple of things for the fire trucks, like one for a Reiner, cab lift cylinder.
Yeah, engine 14 had to get its cab lift cylinders replaced. That was something that was pending, waiting parts, so finally parts came in and then it was sent out for the work. The Visance is that's the other big one there. That's the insurance, the various workers' comp and liability insurances. So that was one, that's for the whole year. And yeah, Leonard's, and then McMahon. So that's the invoice for our services. Those are the big couple for the truck register.
One thing that I do have to say that I like is this one sheet that we got with the checks that were issued for the month, which is kind of nice. It's the first time that I've seen this.
Oh, okay. I will tell Barb to make that a standard report if it's not, so.
Yeah. So look for a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll move to approve.
A second.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Do you want to go through the update on the 2 grants?
Sure. Yep, so shortly after last month's meeting, we were advised Firehouse Subs is a restaurant chain that has a grant program for fire departments throughout the country. The department applied for a grant through that program for auto extrication equipment, so commonly called it's not the brand, but what you would hear is people refer to as the Jaws of Life, although that's a brand name, it's sort of like Kleenex. There's other vendors of that equipment. So the department was awarded $28,965 for purchase of 4 pieces of equipment and some accessories. So it's a nice grant. Kim Smith volunteers her time to write some of these grants, so she's a resident in the area. Had a couple of good discussions with her, and she's more than happy to continue to help in the future. She also did the grant in item C, so she's willing to help with those. So this one, what we did was we had the vendor bring in the equipment that is proposed in the grant, so the firefighters or the officers could actually get hands-on to make sure the next step of moving forward was the right step. The firefighters and the department was really excited because it's, as I understand it, some of their current equipment is ready to be replaced. So this is going to be a good replacement for equipment that is old and ready to be recycled and moved through. The current technology uses batteries versus the older technology uses hydraulics. And a lot of hoses you got to plug in and all this, and this is now literally uses the same batteries you use on your home drills, like a Milwaukee battery or DeWalt or one of those type of things. So the technology is much more portable. So the committee or the group looked at the equipment. They're really excited about it to move forward. So the request of the group is to approve the grant. It's my understanding is the policy to approve the acceptance of the grant, and then I would then go back to Firehouse Subs and say, okay, we're ready to move forward, and then they would coordinate the purchase of that equipment with the fire department. They are looking for, as any good business does, some publicity out of the deal. So they're probably going to do a press release or a picture or something in the future, which is all good. I think I've worked with them on other communities, and they do really good work at this foundation. So the request would be to approve it. The vendor did have one note that I would bring up, and it's not for action tonight, but the group that tried the equipment, there was another piece of equipment that the vendor brought with him that they were really interested in. It's actually 3 pieces of equipment, 1 major piece and then some accessories. It totals $13,660 additional dollars. So last night they had training and an officers meeting. We talked with the officers about that's a challenge. They understand that that's an additional financial obligation if they were to do that. The Fire Association did ask me to pass on to the board whether there would be interest if they would do a sort of a cost share or some sort of fundraising, and the board splits the additional cost. You're not agendaed for action tonight, so I don't believe you can take any action on that part of this, but they were looking for some feedback from the board as to whether that's something the board would be interested in.
What kind of equipment is this that you're talking about? Can you
This
describe it?
Sure, this is called a combi tool, so it is auto extrication equipment. Kevin, I know you were here that night. This is Kevin Clone. He's one of my peers that works on the project from McMahon. Do you have a little more on the combi tool?
Yeah, so they went through the process. They actually had a car inside, and they actually used the tools that night, the spreader, cutter, and the combi tool. Combi tool is a combination of being able to spread and cut versus just having a spreader and a cutter separately. And so I was very impressed with the battery operated tools that they had, so I know they were looking to see if they could add that extra piece of equipment. Again, if it's a multi-vehicle, that can be used along with the other pieces that they have, so it just gives them one additional tool in the tool belt to use, so.
One other question I have, if they got these tools, the old ones are coming back off the truck?
I believe that some of them, they would start getting rid of the older equipment. I think that would be a good move, because you're maintaining equipment then that's out of date
Yeah.
generally. And to invest in that is not a good idea.
And the other question is, I love these battery tools, but I know when it's cold, they don't last near as long as they do when it's warm. And how many extra batteries would we need that would have to go on that 13,000 to make sure we had enough to cut a car?
I'm not familiar, Kevin, do you know?
And I'm not sure, I know Heather was there too. I think there was 2 batteries per tool, correct?
Yeah, you get 2 batteries per tool, and then we also already have a lot of the Milwaukee batteries for our lights and stuff, so we have a stock of backup batteries.
Yeah, and there, I noticed that
And
each tool came with a charger too.
Right, yeah.
And I was thinking, the guy could get an extra battery for a couple of those chargers, but if you gotta have them all charged up right away, I guess that wouldn't work either, so.
Yeah, so like I said, we have a bunch of extra batteries left, I mean, that we use for other things
Yeah.
that we could use. And like the salesman told us, you know, you can go and get them on sale, because they're just Milwaukee they're just
Yeah, for
Milwaukee
$150.
battery tools.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would add that I think that if the department thinks that this is something that would help them, you know, I'd like to see for the next meeting, we can put on the agenda, of course, and then, you know, come with a proposal as to why they think it's needed. You know, so we're not just going off of, well, here's what we remember from it, you know, ideally, the vendor can provide that if they want to sell it to us. And then I'd like to see from the department, you know, it's nice to know that there's extra batteries, but let's actually look. You know, how many extra batteries do we have? How many would this need? My guess is, you know, some of these questions that we're asking, I would imagine that in a proposal that could come forward at the next meeting. And for me, I want the folks to know on the department, you know, it sounds like you're asking how do we feel. For me, I'm not a firefighter, so I have a lot of questions, but if they're wanting to say, well, what is the board's interest in supporting this? I guess what I want to say, if this is what rises to the top, that the association feels that they want to put themselves behind, and they're saying that this is the #1 item, well then of course as a board, you know, we need to consider that, and I would be one, but until right now, all I know is it's one item, maybe they have other items. So I would be, personally, my perspective is, I'd like to know from the association, well, what is their list, prioritize them, and if they're wanting to hear, if we want to support, I mean, that's why we trust them to come forward to us with their priority, right?
Right. I know, Heather, I don't want to put you on the spot, you're the association president. So I know last night at their meeting, they discussed this, and it appeared to me there was interest to tie, understanding you can't take action tonight, but they have their chicken dinner coming up in March, to potentially use that as an item to motivate fundraising through the chicken dinner. If there was, you know, raise money for this item type of thing. But I think if you said at least there was interest to move forward, I think that was primarily what the best, you know, come back with a proposal. That's something we'll consider. I think that you could be good with that.
I think what we were looking for last night was, you know, hey, if we go halves with you, is this something you would be willing to go halves with us on? You know, instead of us just coming to you and going, okay, you know, do you want to buy this tool? We're willing, you know, the reason we like this tool, and I guess I can try and speak for the people that tried them out. The reason we like the combi tool was because you can go from cutting to spreading like right away. You don't have to, instead of having 2 tools and you got to take one tool back and grab the other tool, you can sit there and you can use both tools. It should be faster to get the person out of the vehicle. It should be, you know, we'll be able to work faster, more efficient, and stuff like that. So I think that's why they kind of really like the tool. and because it's battery and we wouldn't have to use our hydraulic, because right now, our combi tool, we have to take out a generator, we have to take out the hydraulic machine and the hoses and it's a lot to get where we can just grab this one and go. So, but yeah, from what I got last night was, we're just trying to find out if it would be something you guys would be interested in if we wanted to move forward and go halves on the tools.
So there was just the one tool you were
Well,
interested in?
there's one tool and then 2 accessories that they were looking at.
The total of those 3 things is
Is
13,660.
You know, just as an advisory thing, it's good to have stuff that, I know that I've got some of this stuff myself, not the spreaders, but I know it's good stuff. And if it beats hauling a cord around on your back to get to where you need to be if you want to drill a hole, I'd be supportive of that. If we have some money somewhere we can come up with to do it.
I guess the best I could say is, I'm interested, we'd have to have a formal meeting, everybody would have to vote on it, we have to figure out where it is in the
Right.
budget.
Right, no.
But if you guys think it's something worthy, I think we can put it on the agenda for next month.
And we've been told before that you guys want to replace some of this stuff, it's not a hit beside the head.
Right,
It's-
yeah.
But I guess what you're saying is you want it, now that I see this, so I guess what I'm hearing is maybe you didn't have time to come forward with a formal proposal because you just heard about this and you want it to be
Right.
something where you can get people excited for the upcoming fundraiser.
Right, I think that's what they're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. So not a commitment to spend at this point, but something that if there was an interest in doing something like that, they could use that as part of their
Right.
advertising for their fundraiser. That they were looking to raise money to buy
Yeah.
this piece of equipment.
Sometimes that helps fundraisers if it's for a purpose.
And it's quite a bit different from the other, I guess I'm also now conscious of, so it sounds like, we just got a donation of the cutter spreader, and it's quite a bit different.
So those are 3 separate pieces of equipment. There's a cutter is a piece of equipment, a spreader is a separate piece of equipment. The combi tool is something that is very portable, it's small, it can do a little bit of both, but not as good as, not perform as well as each individual piece. So it's something that it's easier to move with, it's easier to get, if you're off the road in a ditch, it's lighter weight. It's not gonna do the heavy duty work that the
But it might
equipment
be
that
enough
Grant's
to
gonna
crack
do,
a
but it
door.
might be, yeah. enough.
Whereas, if it's really crinkled, you're gonna have to get the bigger one
Right,
into.
yeah.
I mean,
So we'll put that on the agenda for the future meetings.
Yeah, I think it'd be something to talk about for the future. Okay.
when is the fundraiser again? I haven't.
March
Sixth
5th.
or 5th.
And we meet next, when's our next meeting?
Seven.
The 7th again.
So you're not gonna know.
Right.
I think it seems like what I would suggest is the association could advertise, we're trying to raise money for this piece of equipment.
If we raise
Yeah,
more,
they're-
then it's less,
Right,
Then,
and they would come to you to match or whatever their
They
portion
might
is.
even get just plain donations, not just from the chicken.
right.
Yeah, as long as I think it's not a secret to you. One of my concerns and reason for bringing it up tonight was so you don't see something between now and March 6th that says, hey, we're raising money to buy this piece of equipment. And you're like,
Appreciate
wait a
that.
second.
Yeah.
What piece of-
Yeah, what are we doing? So, that was part of the purpose for mentioning this tonight too. So it's out there, and it's not something that you as the board right now is saying, absolutely not, we're not interested in this. It's something that would be open to having this.
I'd definitely be interested.
Before we move on, can I just ask of this donation from Firehouse Subs, do we have a process in place as far as doing a thank you and accepting it? I mean, I realize we have to vote yet on accepting it formally, don't we?
Yep.
Yet.
So
maybe we need to-
what I would suggest is you approve it, and then I go back to the contact for Firehouse Sub, say, okay, we're ready to move forward, the donation got approved. There's 2 options, they either can buy the equipment and then just have it delivered here, or we can buy it and then they reimburse type of thing, which I think is probably the easier way, because you're dealing with a local vendor versus they're out of Florida and they're gonna deal with somebody that maybe isn't a local dealer. And then we would line up a picture, so they would actually have someone come here, so you'd have the opportunity, maybe we could do it at a board meeting night and do a photo with them and do that type of thing. That's what they're looking for.
And they want publicity.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're
You
looking
can
for.
crash the mayor's car and then they can take it off.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so, are we time for a, should I?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're good with that.
I move that the Ripon Area Fire District accepts the firehouse sub-grants of up to $29,000. If they want to give us more, we'll take more.
Yeah.
Of the grant of around $29,000 for, do I need to say?
It's just, I think the firehouse something
Good.
grant.
For the firehouse sub-grant, great.
That's what I go.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll-
for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'll move on to the Webster Foundation grant.
Yep, so they provided a grant, this was also written by Mrs. Smith for the department, donated her time to do this. This is for public education supplies, and that the department can use for doing school events and teaching people about fire safety for those type of events. They are having a lunch on the 14th that Captain Donovan's going to attend on behalf of the department, to represent the department at that event. They are, more than willing to donate the money, and I think it's a good program to have. It'll get, she's going to talk a little bit about what we'll do with the money, but it's public education.
Thank you.
I do have a question on this. Or does that get segregated someplace so you can pull it out? So we know that all
I would
that's
suggest
back
that
there?
it's segregated.
I would suggest that Barb puts it in a certain
Yeah, they-
I
fund.
think,
I mean, so whoever's in charge of that can look at it and say, well, geez, we got $500 left in there.
Right.
You know, we could give a kid's pizza party, or whatever you
Right,
decide
yeah.
to do with it.
I believe you have a
There was-
donations account.
Yeah, there should be.
I'm just double checking to make sure I'm thinking of the right project I'm working on, that you have us segregated. If not, I would, I think it's just.
I would just suggest that, that's all.
Okay, so any more discussion on that? Otherwise, I look for a motion to accept that grant.
It does say that invite you and one guest, so I think that Chief Donovan is going to attend. Sounds like it'd be nice to open it up to one of the.
Yeah, if someone else wants to go, I'm willing to.
I mean, I'll go.
Okay.
I mean, I think the president or something of the board or
I'll
someone.
reach out to Stephanie and see, because we had to have the reservations in by February 1st.
Oh, okay.
So I'll see if I can.
Yeah,
get
we
one
can,
more.
I'll touch base with
But I
you.
mean, if someone else wants to go.
Yeah, I could not go that day.
You're saying you could go?
I cannot.
Yeah, we can check to see if we can add a person.
I don't know.
Unless Jonathan wants.
No,
You could go with her.
I'm just saying if they allow us to have one, I think it's nice that we as an organization, but if there's a firefighter or someone on the department that would like to go, I'm just offering that let's have a good representation. It's a way to show thanks too, I think.
We'll follow up. Yep.
Yep.
So,
We have a motion in a
yeah.
second.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for one.
Yeah.
Do you have a motion for the acceptance?
Looking for a motion.
Oh, for Webster's?
So I move to accept the Webster's Foundation grant of $1,000.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes, thank you. Move on to the administration report.
Yeah, so I have in the packet a written report that I'll just cover some items. There's also a December monthly call report that Heather has put together with information on calls and then the current roster. John Roy returned to the department last month, so we're up one member, so that's good to see. Other items that I'll mention is we are currently working on updating some policies and procedures, and with the captains and the safety chief last night. We're going to distribute some updated department policies and procedures, which was something mentioned in the 2% dues audit as needing improvement for review, and then with a deadline to get them back and then implement before the next training for the department. So we're moving forward with that. Heather's been working, ESO is the electronic records where they enter all the reports, they keep training records. She's been working to move data from the old system to the new system, which will help with documentation for future audits that come up. I do have a request later in the meeting to, there's different modules that you buy for that. And I am, there's 2 modules that I think the department should have additionally to track its training hours, which they don't have, and that was identified as a deficiency in the audit, and inventory of equipment, and to improve inventory. And that's something that we've seen here is a item that's lacking is a record of what equipment is here.
What do we have?
What do we have? And the system can do it. It's, as with any software company, it's an additional cost. I did look at the 2019 agreement that was signed with this company, but it was a year-to-year agreement. That was included in 2019, but it was a 1-year agreement. I was hoping I could push them to, since we had it, add it, but I don't think that's going to happen. So that was come later in the meeting, but that is in progress. Heather's been scheduling day-to-day scheduling for the day shift. We've had some challenges covering all the open shifts just because it's part-time work and not enough people. So she's does a yeoman's job of doing it, but sometimes it's not able, and you can't succeed sometimes. We have 5 people in the fire officer class. Fire officer 1 is a state training program that prior to 2018 was a recommended certification. In 2018, the state changed the administrative code and said anyone promoted to a position of lieutenant or above after that date has to have this training. Most of your members on the department are grandfathered prior to, it was a grandfather clause for pre. So 5 current members are in that class, and some of them were grandfathered, so they're seeking to get the actual program and training. That is an online offering from Moraine Park. So they're doing it online. We're working to try to get future classes in-house, face-to-face. But you need to work through some of the registration issues and enrollment issues that all colleges have to get enough people in the class to make the class viable to run. So we've been working through that, and then we would open those classes to surrounding departments also, that if they had people that wanted to take those classes. SCBA fit testing, the next item in there is the state code requires you, the face pieces that they wear with their SCBA, those have to be tested to make sure they fit every year, and it's a respiratory protection. We started doing that actually last night. They got about halfway through with the department, and then they had the company that was hired had a problem with the testing machine, so they're going to come back and finish up in the near future.
Is that something that's done annually, and we've done that?
It has not been done annually. It should have been done annually. So we're getting back on track on that.
Okay.
Yeah. The next item on the bottom of the first page of the report is about the engine you talked about in your minutes. There were some questions from the committee that was put together to specify, to work through the engine, and that's not uncommon in departments, is you have a committee with different people on that committee to then say, this is important to us, or this thing, we don't really need that. So the question came back from the committee to our team was, is the $885,000 that was the contract amount with Pierce, was there any additional funds allocated for loose equipment or change orders on the order? So right now that vehicle is and this is not uncommon with other vendors, but Pierce is literally from the time you send a contract, they're 3 years out before you see that truck show up. So my answer, they have provided $13,000 worth of things they would like to add to the specification on the truck based on a meeting they had with the sales representative. At this point, the board has not approved that additional amount because your amount that you approved for the purchase was $885,000, and that's what the contract is with the vendor prior to changing or adding anything. So the question that has come back to the committee, or from the committee, and I am, been talking, I understand a little bit about how this has been funded. I had to get up to speed how you fund your major capital purchases. So if you add $13,000 to $885,000, that's an amendment to what you've approved. So in the next month, I think that a decision has to be made if the board wants to change that contract amount to add those items, or the other option would be to say, no, that's what we're buying, and the committee can, I guess, figure out what's the priority and then come back with something for $885,000.
Do you know, kind of any idea what those changes were?
They were, yeah. So there was a chains sort of for the tires for snow.
Oh, those spinners.
Yeah. There is some other items regarding, and I can tell you here in just a minute, I want to open up that list I have. Just had it open. Where did that go? That was the major one, the chains. That's a pretty costly addition.
So the fire truck, as we were talking earlier, doesn't come with the hoses or whatever, all the stuff that actually makes it help fight fires. What kind of additional cost is that
Yeah.
going to be to the department?
Right, so when you buy an engine on a contract, unless you specify it's fully equipped, it comes with a basic amount of equipment. It comes with a couple nozzles, a couple pipe bowls, a couple of this, a couple of that. It doesn't come fully equipped to actually make it serviceable. So the committee asked, that was the second question they've posed, is what was the intent of the board at the time? And I don't know that you have this answer, I'm just, of how you're funding the equipment side of it. The vendor, and I think it's a little generous, but has recommended 25% of the cost for additional for the loose equipment. That's a significant amount of money.
It is, and that's something
And I don't think you
none of us
planned for
were
that.
aware of when we,
Well, when we were talking about this, we wanted the engine.
20%, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. 20, I misspoke.
Well, we thought they got this engine, but the thought was they maybe didn't need everything that was on that engine, so they could maybe delete some things to get something else.
No, you need the
That's the
hoses.
way I understood it when we were talking to the,
But I guess in hindsight, I expected that deleting was
yeah, if we
above and
deleted.
beyond stuff, not hoses. I just assumed that the hoses were in there.
Well,
So I should ask that.
But I
we
also-
all probably did, right?
But having been on this board when we bought things before, a lot of times they don't buy all that stuff. It comes off the old truck because all that stuff is tested, and, I mean, they have to test all the hoses and all that anyway. So I'm really wondering, if we're actually gonna get rid of the old truck and we're not gonna sell it equipped, why do we have to buy it? I mean, I can see where, sometimes maybe you need a new nozzle or you need, but to buy 20%, what's 20% of 800,000?
200,000.
$160,000.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think what's strange for me, one is that.
And what do we do with all the old
We
stuff?
had the vendor here, and that she did not state that. There was a time frame we were under because apparently we were saving 6 figures by getting it by a certain date that she was saying because of supply chain issues and everything, So it's interesting that suddenly now there's, 20% of the cost that she brings up, or that the Pierce brings up, but also the $13,000 of additional cost, when will more come up? And also, I guess, if the big concern was the supply chain issues, and so we need to lock in, and it's not going to be for 3 more years, part of me wonders, well, the hose and nozzles and other tools, that could be in a total different place right now. I mean, maybe hoses and nozzles are 3 years out, but my guess is they're not quite 3 years out.
Yeah, so what I would, I'll let you finish, and then unless you have any more.
No, I guess I'll just stop by saying, it seems like, and here my colleague just brought up, can we use the old ones? Well, I guess I'd ask the committee, let us know, what do they think? Can we typically use the old ones? Are they proposing that they do need new ones based on the quality of them? Are we going to have to revisit this in 3 years because they don't know? There can be a lot of wear and tear. It feels funny sometimes for us to make these decisions when we're not on the ground using these tools.
Yeah, so what I would recommend to do, one, I will say, you as a board, and it's understandable, you don't deal with fire apparatus vendors every day. I will tell you, it's pretty well known that when you buy a fire engine, it does not come fully equipped by people who deal with fire apparatus vendors every day. So I can say that, and I guess I'll just say that and leave it there. As far as the other loose equipment, that what I would suggest is you're not under the gun to make a decision on that. I want it to be fully transparent about what's out there, but you have 2 years to sort of plan for this. So send back to the committee and say, put together a list of priorities, look at the equipment you have, what's going to go, what needs to go in the dumpster because it's so old, it doesn't work anymore, and you've been, duct taping it together to work versus what is viable. And let's come up with a list of items, and then over the next 2 years, let's put together a plan to budget for that. And that is not, I don't think it's unachievable, but you have time to plan for that and come up with a priority list. The short-term issue is this $13,000 of other things. And so I think option A would be to say, hey, go back and decide what your priorities are, because you can delete things that are in the spec now for $885,000 and say, hey, if this is important to you, put this in, take this out. Or if you're interested, we could bring back at your next meeting to amend the contract amount. I think as a board, that's your sort of 2 options you have.
I'd like to add, I think this is, again, what's hard is I really want to look to the current firefighters. So now we're being asked for, here's an example of, so $13,000 additional cost for a future engine. If that's a priority, then I think of our future fundraiser, we should be fundraising for these additional things if they want that. Or is it this combi tool? So it's hard to make a decision. Now I feel like I just made a statement on a combi tool when I didn't know this was, necessarily the ask. I mean, I guess I saw it in the notes, but my point is, this is where I want to know from the association, did they just make a statement that the combi tool rose to a level of priority over the $13,000 additional costs for the fire engine, or are these $13,000 additional saying that we need this for the safety and well-being and we can't operate without this? And if so, then this seems like this raises, and we should be fundraising, and we could say for the future engine. But I can't make that decision.
I understand. I think that it was intended, there's nothing on the agenda to make a decision tonight. It was information at this point, and we're going to have to, at some point, sign that contract with Pierce, and it's probably in the next month or so.
And those spinner things, I didn't think of it, but we bought our snow plows. We ordered those extra because, if you're stuck in a snowbank and you got to dig the tires out and then try to put a pair of chains on a fire truck or any kind of truck. It's a whole lot better if you got these things. If it's real slippery, you click the switch, they go down, and it's an automatic chain is what you're talking about, I'm sure.
That's, yeah. Yeah, the roto chains.
I can understand where they'd have missed. I never thought about it. But the thing is, we still have to have the extra money someplace. So I still would like them to go back and
And who knows, you know, where the previous chief put together that whole thing, I think we went through a checklist that
he didn't have much
pretty
time.
much puts, yep, so maybe there's a lot of stuff on there that can be deleted too, I don't know. We don't know that, we don't run it, so,
Right.
okay.
But again, I go back to, should this be what we fundraise for? I mean, it's a real-time conversation now, if they're saying they want to know how to promote that, I don't know.
I don't see
This
the
we
fire
have 3
department.
years to worry about, where,
Yeah, I would say that this is a little longer term, the short term, and I'd say that the combi tool is from a fundraising standpoint, it's, I can hold it, I can look at it,
Use it right
and
now.
it's, yeah. something
And
that you can
it's a
read about.
separate item. This is still on the truck.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think if they need the chains on the truck, the fire just pay for that. I can't see where that would be. There's other things they can use their funds for that are just as important, in my opinion.
you have some more than Ronald.
Yeah, so the, back to my screen here. There's a memo, so the 2% dues audit, I think you were the board was copied on, the report is in the packet. It goes through the results of the auditor's findings, Mr. Page, who's state auditor, that's his job, he goes around the state and does this. So we put together, the McMahon team put together sort of a short-term plan to come up with a resolution on those items. So what the state does is they say, you're on probation, so to speak. So you still get the money, 2% dues is what the end result is of this audit. So you're on probation for a year, you gotta fix your problems, this is what they're telling you. We're gonna give you the money, but next year we're gonna come back and we wanna see that the issues that we identified are fixed, but to get the money the following year. So from a 2023 budget standpoint, you're fine, because you're gonna get the money, or your municipalities will get it, and then you turn it over to the fire district.
Basically a wash.
Yeah, 2024 is what's at risk at this point. The McMahon team went through the list of items that were identified as deficient, and we've come up with, here's what we're gonna do to resolve those items. The first being incident record keeping, and that's, so when you respond to a fire, you have to file a report, what's called the National Fire Incident Reporting System, NFIRS, you'll see it's an abbreviation in a lot of places. The ESO records management system has that capability, which you own, but you're behind in entry because you switched software. The problem is in the process of being resolved. But Heather is entering those reports in ESO now to upload them to the state, and that's what you have to do. You upload them to a site, and they put them in a database. And she's up to August. They were looking for up to end of year, basically. It's in
So in
process.
other words, we have the data, it's just it wasn't acceptable to them the way it was.
It's not reported in the system that they are looking for it to be reported. Yeah. So it will get done. And one of the things that we talked about at the officer meeting last night is a better way whether or not there's a more efficient way to enter those reports. Then what happens now is they come back from a call, they handwrite their notes on a call, and then that form, so to speak, is given to Heather, and then she enters it into the database the next day she works, so to speak. So there may be a more efficient way of doing it, but we're going to work through with the officers how that might work, or if it's a better way to do it. It will get resolved.
You mean instead of simply handwriting, we could have a computer where they're typing?
Yeah. And that comes with some challenges. I'm going to just tell you, especially with people who are not computer savvy. And so there's a fine line of, is it more cost effective to have them enter their own report, or to have someone that's computer savvy enter it and take from notes that the responders need? That's sort of the issue we face. We need to work through that. Training records, this is one of the items that will come up in a little bit with the ESO. So the training records were the state is looking for more than an attendance sheet of, hey, I was here today. They're looking for topics, what was accomplished, what job performance requirements, which is a fancy term for you better know how to do this, so you have to show me you can do it. What was accomplished in that training? The department didn't have those records. So we need to improve the record keeping as part of the training process. So after they're done training, have a lesson plan to start. Here's what we're going to cover tonight. Here's what our goals are. Here's who was here. And then at the end of the year, be able to produce a report of firefighter Smith had X number of hours in this topic area, and that's what they're looking for. And it's not just the audit that would look for that. If you ever had an unfortunate situation with an injury or a line of duty death of a firefighter, NIOSH, which is the National Institute of Safety and Health, which comes in and does those investigations, that is something that is one of the first things they're going to look for is those records. So unfortunately, they're not there right now. So we need to work through that. The fire inspection records.
So do I hear you saying that is a process that is just something that we're learning?
It's a record-keeping process, and we just need to improve record-keeping. A lot of what's in here is that's what this is. They're doing the training, they're performing it, it's having records to prove that. So either the audit, or you have some protection on the back end from a liability standpoint that, probably when I started 27 years ago, you did the training and you know you did it. Now, just like probably most of our public, family or professional lives, you got to have a piece of paper that says you did something now to prove it in case someone ever comes back to ask that question. Same thing with the inspections. So the inspections, there's two pieces to this. There's just getting the inspections done. And so the state statute, or the administrative code, I should say, says you have to have the substantial completion of inspections. It doesn't say 100%. But when they're talking 98%, they're 50% isn't substantial in their eyes. Not all inspections were completed, it would appear, or at least the records don't show that. It's not to say someone went there and did it, but there is not a record of that occurring. And the record of ones that occurred at times were not complete. So that needs to be fixed. They look back 7 years. So you have a pretty sufficient time frame of that. The second piece to that is not specific to the audit, but as a department, you charge for fire inspections. There's a fee that goes out to your businesses that qualify to have a fire inspection. That fee is based on a fee structure that we'll talk about a little later in the meeting. But the question, as I think some of you have heard, there's speculation of not all the inspections were done, but the fees were potentially charged. So one thing that we've been working on is to match up the tax ID with your inspection list. So when 2023 inspections happen and those bills go out, and they go out in November, I think it is, there is an actual match to everything that's there. And then there's an accounting for what comes in and what comes out, or what bill goes out and what comes in to pay the bill. So that issue is separate from the 2% dues audit. That's a whole separate, but I know it gets, from what I hear, talk to people in the community, that gets tied together. Because there's a view that I paid for this inspection, and the question is, did you do it or not? So they're two separate issues, but they get tied together as a perception.
Do we know what percentage was completed, or is that not important?
He did not, I don't believe he wrote that in his report. We would need to spend some more time to come up with this. It is fixable, you can fix it. It's a matter of, again, back to, it's a record-keeping issue primarily. It can be fixed, so we've been working with, for the city, your appraisal company, or, I don't want to say it wrong, there's Accurate and Associate, I don't know what company to use, there's a couple companies that do that type of work, if contracted, so they work with the tax ID numbers, and we're trying to match up your inspection records to your tax IDs to make sure all the commercial properties have documented and they're getting inspected if they're getting a bill. So the other Kevin, we have a lot of Kevins, he's working on that, and he is in process of matching those up with Heather, and then what our intention is to get the inspections done. It's not a challenge of whether they can be done or not. We feel there's more than enough time with the day shift crews to get those inspections done. So we're gonna work with those staff members to get them up to speed of the process, and then get them out inspecting in the next month or so. So they haven't started their 2023 inspections yet. We need to make sure the records are organized and then get them out there. The public education record keeping is the next item. I believe the department did public education events, but there was
A lot of record.
right. So we have a process to, now, the ESO system that you have can record it. We're just gonna come up with a procedure that says when you do these, this is how you document it, and then the next time they come back, we'll be able to say, here's our record. So, as I said before, as far as our recommendations, there is not, the best way to do this is to keep all your information in one place. And the ESO, which you're paying for already as a base contract, has the ability to do all this, but there's an additional charge. They're a software as a service, so they're in the cloud, you pay an annual fee, you don't have a server on site or anything, they update it when they have updates. So their quote, I've asked them to give me a quote for being able to track the training, the personnel, and the inventory, which would give us the ability to track all this, is $2,890 a year, plus a one-time setup fee of $950.
We already have a yearly for whatever we're already using.
Pay about $2,000 now.
So this is on top of?
This is on top
So
of.
the total would be almost
Yeah.
$5,000.
Right. And I'm pretty familiar with the industry and how they charge just from other projects we have, and this is very competitive. It's not something that's out of the, you're not getting ripped off, so to speak. I think it's very competitive. For another client we have, I just paid $10,000 for the year for a subscription for something similar from another vendor. So I think you're in the ballpark, so to speak.
So switching somewhere might not save us money. It would just be a headache of trying to learn a new software that we don't.
You're already, I would say you have one foot in in the water, so it's easier just to put your second foot in, then pull out and start all over again. Yeah. So that would be something that is agended for approval tonight, if you are so inclined to do that.
And that's every year we pay the extra 2,000?
Yeah. It's pretty much how software is being sold, they're not selling it.
No wonder I don't compete.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can.
So that comes up under item 8,
Right.
or agenda item 8. Let me just make sure I cover everything else here. So those are the recommendations. Other items that I think we have some time to build, and we've talked about this strategic plan, which I think we're getting to that point where we can start talking about that as a team. The standard operating procedures we are working on now. That was brought up in the audit. The inventory we talked about before. I think the recruitment is something, an item that we're going to prioritize in the process for part-time and paid on call, or primarily paid on call. the internal controls and workflow of the invoices we're working on now, management of the training, the scheduling process. I think Heather puts a lot of time into scheduling. So if we can make it more efficient, that would be helpful. And then the relationship building with the neighboring departments, we've been working through, and with the ambulance service too, with Mitch and his team at Ripon Guardian. Those are some things we've prioritized just to move forward, and we'll want to talk to you tonight, just let you know sort of where we're going. Other items that are in that in the administration report of note, talked about 2% dues. I was asked to provide an update on the fire station project, so the upstairs building project. There was, I guess that was in process, it's not completed. You're more than welcome to walk up there if you'd like, but my understanding is the project was being funded strictly through donations, so there's no money budgeted for this year to complete it. So at this point, I'm not aware of any other donations that are available to complete it, so I believe the project is generally on hold. I don't know where else to go with it.
Well, and that would be an example of if the association thought that the fundraiser coming up, the funds would go to that, but if they're making a decision to, again, put it towards, for example, the combi tool, I mean, those are the, right?
Yeah, I think just from a perspective standpoint, I believe to finish that upstairs, you're probably upwards of $200,000 at this point. So it's a bigger ask than a smaller tool. I think you have sprinklers system that needs to be changed, HVAC system work that needs to be done. It's not paint and some finish work. It's significant. So I would say just it's on hold until maybe if you want to prioritize it in the budget next year or something like that. That's where you're at. With that, I guess I would take any other questions that you might have for this section of the meeting.
I just have a question. The Guardian Ambulance Service, do they maintain their own type of ESO system? Is there a chance of linking ours and theirs together into one system?
I wouldn't
we share the cost?
I would think they do, but that will be an additional module that they will charge you for their patient care records, which is probably what they're using for. I'm having a meeting with Mitch. We've talked on the phone several times, but I haven't actually, next Tuesday. I have a lunch meeting with him and his team just to learn more about how they operate and what they do. So I can ask, but I don't think it's going to be a big viable option. Yeah.
Do you plan to report on at some point in the agenda about, work internally with the department and how morale is and that type of stuff? When will you?
Yeah. So let me just look at my agenda. I'm scrolling here. So.
I mean, I think it's important right now to take note of.
I guess I'm going to cover that. We'll do it under this option or item. I had a separate memo in there about staffing options, and I think that ties into that discussion. So I think we've had the McMahon people. We've had about a month and a half to sort of get our feet on the ground and figure out the lay of the land, so to speak. And that I feel like we're at a spot where now we have an idea of moving forward versus still learning about sort of what needs to be worked on here. I will preface the whole statement by the people here are very dedicated at what they do. They put in a ton of time. They put in probably more time than any of us know of their own time to keep the place moving. Running a fire department that is all basically part-time people is a challenge because everyone has other priorities in their life. It's not your sole career that you got to show up for to get your paycheck every 2 weeks. This is something that is probably to a lot of people either fun, they like it, it's community service, or it's a little bit of extra money they can get in their pocket every couple weeks. And with that, you have a ton of dedicated people. I mean, I can't say enough about the people that are on the department that are working to keep things moving. There are a lot of, specific to your question about morale, there are, in any organization, and maybe more in emergency services than in other places, the rumor mill is what kills you. people either intentionally or unintentionally get information, and then by the time it gets that game that you used to play when you were a kid, you go around the table, and next thing you know, what I said is, hey, Jonathan's sweater is red. Goes around the table, and next thing you know, Gary gets around and Gary says, it was yellow, you didn't see it, where Jonathan wore this ugly yellow sweater to the meeting the other night. And he didn't, but that's what someone decided to spin the story to be. And that, you get a lot of that out there, which then creates cause for concern, and there's some rumor and speculation in the community, from what I can tell, regarding the transparency or the trustworthiness of the fire department. From a morale standpoint, that is what I see as the biggest issue right now. It's not, I don't see morale. You have a lot of people that are, last night they had their training, they're laughing, they're having fun, they're working together. It's not I've worked in environments where morale is poor and people don't talk to each other and there's, just a bad environment. I don't see that here. There is concern, which as a member when you're a team member, when you think the outside doesn't potentially trust what you're doing, that creates like, oh man, are we really doing the right thing? We're here to serve the community, but does the community understand that, we're not whatever the rumor is? So I think one of the things we, need to build up is trust from the community side, and that may not be. It's more could be speculation of non-trustfulness, but media reports, things that are out there, gets around, and these people here, it's not a big city, they hear what's being talked about in the community too. So from that standpoint, I think that's something that we need to work on.
A question for me, if, outside of maybe why or, what you're seeing maybe happening, do we have a process in place where if a firefighter has a concern or they want to talk to someone about perhaps morale as an example, what is the process?
Yeah, so Kevin is here usually 3 nights a week. We post as often, I send out that sort of weekly update. We try to get so the firefighters know, here's the nights he's going to be here. He talks to them a lot. He's to the point where sometimes he can't get all his work done because, and there's nothing wrong with it. But
that's what the trust building part.
Right,
That's the nice part is you really learn about each member here, what their concerns are, and then we go back and we're like, hey, we really need to fix this. Or if you hear one thing from 5 people, that should be a priority. That's something that we need to work on. But I really have enjoyed being down here and listening and being able to try and help move along and be progressive. But it does take time, and it does, I mean, Heather's here usually when I'm down here, but there's usually 3-4 people that'll stop in and sit down and chat, or I've stayed later when there was a crew down here and listened to their concerns, and those are some of the concerns that Chief Whitaker is talking about now, that, hey, we need to prioritize and make sure that we take care of the members that are here, because I want to build trust that we're going to do the right thing, and then also utilize their thought process on how to move forward, because they got to have buy-in too and be part of the success of moving forward. So
if someone's listening, perhaps from the department or somewhere, to go to Chief Kevin and they can talk to you about concerns.
Yep, or Chief Whitaker or Chief Pierce when he's here.
Yeah, I talked to some people last night. So it's building that trust, and then hearing their concern, I think, is what our priority has been, and saying, hey, how can we help this organization? You're all part of the organization. How can we help it move to whatever your concern is, whether that's rebuilding a perception of mistrust. I'm not saying that's a true statement. I'm saying there's a perception that could be out there. Or, hey, we're concerned about this piece of equipment that wasn't prioritized, and now listen, everyone has worked with people, and that's a large part of building trust and relationships and moving an organization forward that's had turmoil.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what we did, we looked at including some of the morale issues and said, okay, you know, the question has come up about what about an interim chief? Our role is a role of what we call management counsel or administrator. So from a legal perspective, we're not, McMahon is not the fire chief. There's a lot of people asking, some of the members are saying, like, who's really in charge, who's the chief? You know, there's, the fire department is a sort of paramilitary organization, there's a structure. Everyone wants to know what the structure is. So we looked at a couple options that I want to present to you. It's not agendaed for action tonight, but something to think about, and then I think in the next month or so, that would be something you can consider, is what is that short-term plan, and then what's your long-term plan, is how I'm looking at it. The long-term plan should come out of the strategic plan document, and that takes time. You're not going to come up with a long-term plan today. We can work on the long-term plan. So one, to not be done with the long-term plan, I think is ill-advised to appoint or hire a fire chief. And when I say that, I'm talking not an interim or an acting fire chief, a fire chief, because how state statute works is if you appoint a chief, there's some inherent rights to that position that if in a year you decide you want this place to look completely different than what it does today, you now have a position where you have a person who has inherent right who is only eliminated technically by cause. So in other words, discipline or some sort of progressive process which takes time. There's other ways to deal with that, but I don't think they're a way that probably most reasonable people would want to go about. And I view all you as reasonable people. So the interim process is, I think, a way to say, okay, what is the short term to have some leadership and resolve some of the issues that have come up in some of the 2% dues discussions and other things, keep the department responding. They do, like I said before, when they go to a call, they do a fine job. They know exactly what they're doing, that they're good at what they do, they're dedicated people. So, you know, how do you get from point A to B? One of the big issues that we see that I have, we all, the three McMahon or the four of us have a concern, and this is a nature of part-time and paid-on-call departments, is you don't, the shifts they work are, like the daytime people are here, they work like 1 day a week, and there's not a consistent face to manage that group of people. They're not, a lot of them aren't promoted officers in the department, they're here working a shift. So the pass-on of information of critical, like inventory of equipment, something broke, this needs to be fixed, here's what we did today, is very limited, which creates a lot of rumors and a lot of hearsay in the organization and people going, I don't know what's going on around here. So one of our suggestions is to have a consistent face here Monday through Friday. And you had that with the fire chief's position, but I think at this point, I wouldn't recommend you just go and fill a full-time fire chief position because of some of the things I talked about before. So to have a face here that can put in a strategic direction, manage, get some of these things done, and it has administrative support. I think Captain Donovan, her position was sort of a flexible position to provide administrative support, and at times was less than a day a week. Since the chief left, she's been here at least 3 days a week, and I will tell you there's more work than she knows what to do with it 3 days a week. It's probably something to consider. One item we've looked at, and I'm not saying we're at the point of recommending that as a permanent solution, is her role a full-time position and your chief is a part-time position. And that's a model that other communities use like this. And you have your part-time people here during the day that can do the fire inspections. The chief, I think from looking at history, the chief's primary role at the time was to do fire inspections. That's sort of what created this job. To be frank, I think to find a qualified person to be the chief and just to do inspections is going to be tough. If you're going to find someone from the outside that wants to come here to be the chief, that's an interesting bird. It's going to be a challenge. Yeah. So I
Keep her
think
on mute, she's not gonna talk.
I think there's a process that we need to go through to get to that point, but I think you need someone here 5 days a week. And one of the options we looked at is with Captain Donovan's position becoming that full-time position. She has the ability to do all the data entry issues, the record keeping that we talked about earlier in the 2% dues audit. That's something that person can do and manage that and have a different structure, and whether that is you as a board pick someone you want to hire as your part-time interim chief for 24 hours or 23 hours a week. We could help find that person. To be completely honest with you, one of the reasons I brought this forward too is when we, as McMahon, took on the project, we're putting in more hours than our estimate was, and we want to be upfront with you. The project estimate, we found there's more work that's needed than what we initially thought. So when we gave you a proposal, the proposal was, we're exceeding that just to keep the place, to keep moving here. And we want to be completely upfront with you and transparent that our bills are, if we kept doing this moving forward, it's going to be a lot more than what we initially had projected it to be. So, an option would be, and I put in the packet, and we can have some discussion and talk about it in the March meeting. There's different cost options, how that's structured. Some are cheaper than others. But at this point, to have, so we're recommending a consistent face here. We could help you find that person to be an employee of the department and then title them interim or acting chief. The other option is you continue with the model you have with us, but we want to be transparent that our hours billed are going to be much higher than what we had expected when we took the project on. If you did an interim chief, our recommendation is, and this is totally your decision, but we could keep our hours down and be an advisor or the management council role to the chief, which is what we had sort of thought initially this would more turn out to be a couple hours a week versus having here 3 nights a week. And it's costing you money, so we want to be upfront about that. So that information's in the packet. That's not agendaed for a decision, but I'd be more than happy to either entertain any questions, or if you have any thoughts for another option that we could put together to have a discussion on in the next month for the meeting, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Maybe you just explained it and I missed it. So I see in the option 1, you guys would cap yourself at the 10,000 per month.
Yeah.
Are you also capped on the option 2? Or are you, I just don't see that called out.
So option 2, what I would view, option 2 is a lot lower. I mean, we could, I don't think we'd ever get to 10,000 a month under option 2. My projection was more like 4 hours a week. So that's about $560 a week for the week. So I guess if that was if something you'd want to ask about, we probably could do that and say, hey, if a month ever went way over, we could cap it at $10,000. I think I'd have to talk to my boss about that, but I think that's probably an option to talk about. Option 1, just in summary, has us, McMahon, providing you someone here guaranteed 24 hours a week. On-site, 3 8-hour days or 4 6-hour days, however that would work. and gets a consistent face to work with Heather. There's a lot of stuff that comes up during the day that's when your people are here, and it provides some pass on some continuity in what's going on every day and manage the fire inspections, manage the training, that type of thing. Option B, or two, I'm sorry, is a part-time chief that you as a board would hire. So the hourly rate is lower than our rate. I think $50 an hour is probably a competitive rate to hire somebody to do that kind of work. And then we would do like 4 hours a week to say, what do you need, special, they may have a question, how do you think we should handle this or handle that? That would be variable. It wouldn't be guaranteed 4 hours a week. It could be 0 for a couple of weeks.
Where are we at on the agenda, Robert?
So we're under staffing options,
Okay.
which is A2.
Up under the administration report.
Oh, okay, I see where we're at now.
6A2.
I think
We jumped around a little bit.
we jumped around a little bit, okay.
All under this administration.
Right, okay, I see where we're at. I was just a little,
So then
Understood.
option 3 is sort of a blended option. It's also, I believe, the most costly option. It would put us not only an interim chief, but it's actually just a little cheaper than option 1. An interim chief or a part-time chief plus additional 12 hours, so it's a little more on our time. It's 8 more hours a week versus option 2, which is 4 hours a week. The option, so what it does, in general, you were paying for the chief on his salary, you paid Wisconsin Retirement, which is 13.22% this year. And then you had a health insurance plan that you were paying. So it moves those, if you create a captain, full-time captain position, it moves those benefits over to that position. Because now you're having someone work 40 hours a week. You have to do WRS and you have to offer health insurance at that point. It doesn't mean the person will take health insurance. They may have another option for their insurance, but I wanted to include that number in there as a placeholder in case that did happen. I didn't want to have a surprise.
Heather, are you on board with doing any of that? Full-time, part-time? I don't know if that changed what you normally do.
Yeah, I would get rid of some of my cleaning jobs, but I wouldn't get rid of them all. I can work them, the ones that I would keep, I would work around the schedule here, so.
That's just something for us to think about, the action would be maybe next month.
Yeah, we can keep doing what we're doing this month through February, and then come back and have if you have questions, digest it, think about it, and see where you want to go.
But at some point, it's going to start costing us more and more just to keep you guys here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're not a cheap option, I guess I want to be upfront about it. Our option is a little, what the initial option is, the management council program, which is what we had talked about doing, versus interim chief is 2 different things, and our hourly rate is higher, so when you start, if you do 8 hours a week, it's reasonable, but I don't want, and McMahon does not want to be, we want to be transparent and say, hey, our proposal was X, and we're really experiencing Y at this point, to keep everything moving here. But you need someone here. I will tell you, you can't go without someone in that sort of management role for at least 24 hours a week. You will have more problems.
So that's something that we can all think about,
Yeah.
and we'll most likely work on it for next month.
Yep.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, we were just asked earlier in the meeting to get more, you asked the board to be more clear on where the $885,000 is coming for the future engine. We were also asked, there's an additional amount for the engine, $13,000, plus an additional 20% of about $177,000 that we'll have to be spending. I get that those are a couple years out, but as a board, we need to figure out where that money is coming from. Now we have options upwards of $300,000.
That's not new money, just so we're clear. That's not 300 new. Your current cost is about $247,000. So that's the, on the.
We budgeted 247.
247,163,
Anything above that is-
0.76. The options we're presenting are the number in each chart, like option 1.
So it's
Yes.
about $60,000 extra
$60,000,
though.
yeah.
That I need to find. Plus we're being asked for new equipment. Plus we have the upstairs, as you mentioned, that is not safe for people to be in apparently. So there's just a lot of funds right now we're being asked, and what is our plan? I don't want to just think about it. I want to have some.
I don't know about stairs. I think it's fine to go up there. I
Yeah.
don't think it's unsafe for people to go
I
up
heard you say
there.
there's a
It's just
sprinkler
not-
system.
No. If they finish the work, they have to move the sprinkler system around. That
Okay.
costs money. There's a sprinkler, it's safe to go up.
Yeah, I've been up there.
My point is
It's-
outside of that then, there's a lot of things about money and I feel as though, even with these options, I can think all I want about this, but I feel like it would be responsible for us to weigh in some feedback from the department so that we can make an informed decision. How do we go about doing that so that we can understand what is our department, what do people who are boots on the ground, what options do they like?
I guess I feel like it's, the way I hear it, it feels kind of like a triage situation where it's like it has to function, right? So like that's the first thing, right? And then there's the equipment that's like the nice to have part of that sure, it'd be great if we can figure out the money. And then the upstairs, I don't know, just ignore that for now, it doesn't really matter, it's there, right? But like keeping everything functioning, like that should be our priority, right? That's what I took from all of this, and if we can figure out how to come up with the money creatively for the engine or, tires to make it work in the winter, that would be great, but.
But I still go back to my original, what I just said was, for these three options, I think it would be helpful to get, I assume I'm not the only one to think that we want to know what the department feels. I agree that is our priority. So because it's a priority and we're just gonna wait for another month and think about it, that doesn't seem like it's a priority.
You guys have feedback from that?
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
Mike,
Mike, can I
Ellen will-
speak?
Yeah.
Okay, for financing the fire truck, I can't speak for the town of Ripon or the town of Mapieska, but that fire truck will go in a 5-year capital improvement plan. And the 77% portion of which the city of Ripon is obligated to pay will be bonded for. And if there are additional costs, they would be rolled into the bonding for that. And probably, the bond would probably come out in 3 years. And I don't know if Barry wants to talk about how the town of Ripon would proceed. I can't speak for them, but I can tell you how the city of Ripon will fund the fire truck, whether you choose to add the chains or whatever else.
Okay, so going back to your question, back to the question of the options, you would just ask them, do they have any?
Yeah,
Feedback
so-
from
so-
working with the firefighters.
Yeah, I think that moving the captain position to a full-time position is the first priority that I would do. I would say that's number one, because that accomplishes your record-keeping issues, which are significant, and it puts you in a better position moving forward. I would say that that's what I would say. If you don't do anything else, do that, because you have someone that can do the work, that's qualified, that knows the system, that's been here, and will be here 40 hours a week at a minimum, and get your your issues that's identified in the 2% dues and would be identified, and even if it wasn't 2% dues, that will come up in any consultant you hire is gonna come in and say that's your number one priority. To have, because that's your back if something bad happens. You have documentation, you have records, and you have solid backing that you provided this, training and service and inspections and all that kind of stuff.
And right now, we're just talking as you possibly being the interim chief, right?
No, it would not be the interim chief. I would say that's not how I would recommend doing it, and I think, I've talked to Heather about that, I think she's on board with the
I
same.
guess that was my interpretation
Yeah.
of it, so I don't want
No.
to make one
Yeah,
thing
no,
one way
that-
or, meaning one way or another.
Yeah,
Trying to clear it.
another, so I think that's your top priority. Where you land, whether you take one of your current people and appoint them interim chief, and that could be someone who's more of an operational person, I guess I'll call it, not an administrative person. If you have someone on the department now that may be interested in that. There's a couple of ways to blend this all together. But I think it's something that in the next month, we can keep moving forward. I think if I had to say, my priority would be to figure out how to get an administrative person here 40 hours a week. That can be a consistent face to deal with the part-time people that are here every day, because there's different faces 5 days a week. It's not the same people. It's not like your job where you work 40 hours a week and you come to work in the morning, you go home at 4, and then you come back the next morning at 8, you work till 4, and you're working with the same people every day. There's different faces, so there's always questions about what happened yesterday, where's this, where's that. You need someone here that she talks to them when they leave, and the next day she's here and she talks to that next crew and says, here's what happened yesterday, here's what we need to work on, here's our priorities for the day.
Question, now, let's say that we do that, and we get Heather down here 40, which is a full-time job.
Yep.
And now, when you get done with your strategic plan and all that, we decide we're gonna go with a full-time fire chief like we had. And then what happens, does that allow us, all right, Heather, we appreciate you, but now you're back to captain like you were. Is that a problem? I know if we hire a fire chief and we decide to want to like his views,
Yeah.
we get in big trouble. You can't get rid of it. Bad
Yeah,
trouble.
I think you're in a little different spot. I think there's still the issues of you reduce someone's hours, and there's legal issues, that you have to deal with, any employer has to deal with. Now you say, okay, you were 40, we're gonna put you to 20, let's call it. I would want to, one way to go about it, and I would want to ask Mr. Macy, or Attorney Macy this, is what's the difference to then having what they call a limited term appointment versus a permanent appointment? And we could do that research in a month and have that.
And I'd also like to know what Heather thinks about that. She gonna bite on this for 40 hours a week, and then next year or next year and a half or 8 months down the road, we say, well, now we got things back together, so we don't need you for that much time. I don't know. I don't want to be unfair to anybody,
Yeah,
but I also don't want to be unfair to my constituents.
Right.
What did you do?
Yeah, I think our team at this point, we not at a final recommendation, but I think if you want to continue to have part-time people here during the day and accomplish your needs, I think at this point, we feel you could do it with a part-time chief and more of an administrative, like an office manager or an administrative manager of the department.
So we actually have a person and a half is what you're recommending.
Yeah.
Versus before we had a person.
Right, yeah. And that, I think, would be a viable option, and some of the challenges you're gonna find is, I think, to recruit a chief full-time, you're gonna pay a significant amount more than you were paying. And so either way, your costs are gonna go up. It's a matter of how you divide the cost. I think the going rate out there to bring in someone full-time for a chief is gonna be about $100,000 from what I see in the market. We do this hiring chiefs in other places. That's what the going rate is right now. So you got about a $30,000 difference from what you were paying your previous guy. And that's a significant increase. So I think it may be even more cost-effective to have
Hire an administrative
Right.
officer.
and have someone provide some support on a part-time basis as the chief. And have your part-time, daytime people do your fire inspections, which they're more than capable of doing.
They have to be certified though, don't they?
No, not all of them, though. You have to have someone in the department, the chief has to be either certified or have someone on the department that's certified that manages the inspection program. And then they can delegate to who does them. Best practice would be they all get certified, but you don't have to have them also.
So in other communities, when you see people hiring part-time, does that mean that that person, do you get someone to move to the community? Does that mean that people are working in one community part-time and another community part-time?
Something like that, or you have a person who has a flexible schedule as maybe a full-time firefighter in a bigger community that works 24-hour shifts, so their schedule is 10 days a month to work their full-time job, and they're looking for part-time income to work, and maybe they live in the community. There's some options that we can think of that would be local, that maybe want to work 16 or 20 hours a week and is willing to be on call on the nights they're not working their full-time job. And that you bring in someone with some experience from other agencies, and that model has worked in other communities. I've seen that work before. And it's a little more cost-effective, and I'm gonna probably, there's two chiefs sitting in the room here. Most people, at the risk of, and I'll say this, if you hire someone to be the fire chief, most of those people aren't coming here saying, I want to go do fire inspections all day. They want to be an administrator who oversees and manages things. I think that's one of the challenges you may have had, is the requirement was a lot of doing work, not an administrator. And the desire of most people who are looking for a chief's job is not to go do fire inspections every day. They're looking at it as more of a manager type of job, not a doer. So it's a challenge to recruit someone to do that, and have that be their job. And so that, it may be different. 10 years ago, I think it was a little different. That's the crowd you're looking at who are looking for fire chief's jobs now. They're going to school, they're getting a 4-year degree, they want to be a manager of people. They're not looking to go out and check the oil on the fire engine every day and work their way through that work, more of a hands-on type of job. So we can come back with some other, we've got some feedback, we'll come back next month with some follow-up.
Okay.
So I think the agenda, it says to, my computer just froze. There we go.
You went through the administrative
Report.
So
We did, so in the packet, I know Jolene had asked about an exit interview process. I'm not looking for your approval, but there is a policy that we are implementing, just for your information, on exit interviews. That was requested from the board, I think 2 meetings ago. It took a little time to put it all together. But I talked to her a little bit about her thoughts on it, and we're going to move forward and implement that at this point in time. So it's informational, it doesn't need to be.
Thank you for showing it to me.
Yep. So that would go to item 7. I just let Michael turn it back to you, because I believe Ellen has a report, and she forwarded a memo that I will send around. Take a copy. That's her report on the forensic audit.
Do you want me to go ahead and read it, Mike?
I think it's the questions for
Yes.
you want her to give it, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so that the public, are you on camera? Mike?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so this is the update on the forensic audit. After several electronic meetings with CLA, and this is people who are located in California as well as Wisconsin, this is their recommended plan of action. They cannot do a forensic audit for us as it would be a compromise of their independence as our auditor. Amber D was able to confirm that the 2020 credit card charges were all done off book. They will consult and assist with whomever we find to do the audit. After many attempts to find someone to do a forensic audit, I have found someone who will assist us. This person agrees we need to do the legwork recommended by CLA. Once we have done all of that, they will come in and assess what we have and give us a quote and confirm if we need to proceed forward. This person wishes to remain anonymous at this time. However, they are very well respected in their field. We need to get the following documents pulled together and review them. Doug Iverson has agreed to review the documents once they are located. They include 5 years of Horicon bank statements, which I believe Heather does have in the office for review, 5 years of deposit slips, and the Elon credit card statements for 5 to 7 years. We did fill out, between Robert and I, we filled out the final request for those, for access to the Elon credit card and faxed, I think Heather faxed it in, I tried to fax it from here. And it's about 30 days before we can have access. CLA has also suggested we look for another checking account that may have been set up in the district's name. Horicon Bank does not have such an account as they checked at my request. CLA has also recommended looking at any new vendor changes within the recent past to track purchases. So that's where we are right now.
Do you want to comment anything on
Yeah.
some of this? Or?
So I think I would, based on some of the morale discussions we had earlier, I think this is a good move forward when you get to that point of getting that information together, based on some trust and transparency questions that are even in the organization. So I would think this is a good move for the board. The one item that I know maybe some concern, and I would recommend, and I think at this point the anonymity of that person is okay, but if you enter into a contract with them, that anonymity would go away. I don't think there's any way you could move forward with it.
No, it's not public right now.
Right.
It's, if we enter into a contract, it has to be a public vote by the board. They have to approve the contract.
Yep.
And then this person would be out in the open then?
I'm sorry, what?
This person or this company would be out in the open for everybody to know about?
Yes, at this time, it's an individual, and I don't know if their company would be involved. It's a highly respected firm from the Fox River Valley. And it would have to be public if we if we go forward with the audit, and because we'd have to sign a contract.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any action tonight.
No,
Correct.
no, that's just an update. No action.
Can I ask what is meant by one of the statements here?
Sure.
Or maybe not, if it'll be in the future be talked about, but it says, the representative from CLA was able to confirm that the 2020 charges were all done off book.
Correct.
All in we're referring to the 2020 charges.
They have no charges. CLA, we went through individual lines. There are tens of thousands of dollars of charges. None have gone through the books of the fire district.
Ellen, Ellen, can you just explain what account you're talking about?
The credit card,
Through which bank?
Elon,
Okay, thank you.
the one
So,
that we
who paid those then?
trying to get access to.
We don't know.
Oh,
We don't know what was charged, we don't know who paid them. But we know there was significant activity.
but we didn't pay it.
From what I understand, talking with Barb, we did not pay that. She did not know anything about it.
Which is why CLA has recommended looking for another account.
Okay. Anything else, Ellen?
Nope,
Okay.
Well, I guess we'll just move forward. It's not an action item, so it's just information.
Yeah, I think that there's work that, as she says, needs to be done. It's not that the board is not doing anything about it. It's just, there has to be some homework done to get to the next step. That would be a good way to clarify that for
I agree.
the listening parties.
Okay.
I assume it'll be on a future agenda item as an update?
Yeah, I would.
it will be on all agenda,
Yeah,
future
I think so.
agenda
Yeah.
items.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move on to new business. First is the board members are all encouraged to and are invited to assist in the Fire Association's chicken barbecue, and that is March 5th, right?
Correct.
So all you have to do is just show up that day and they'll put you to work somewhere, whether it's cleaning tables, putting
Where's it at?
right
It's here
here,
at the
Right here.
station.
the delivery orders together or whatever, drive-through.
And what time is that? 10 to 1? 10 to 2?
We serve from 11 to 1:30.
Okay.
Firefighters will be here at 8 o'clock that morning. Some will be here at 6 o'clock to flip chickens. Some will come in at 8 to start getting ready. We try to have everybody here by 10 to start getting everybody into their jobs, and then
So if someone with the board showed up at 8 o'clock in the morning
we find a job for them.
for a couple hours?
Yep, yep,
Okay.
whatever, however long, we'll take whatever help you want to give us.
Delivering this here too?
Yes, we are. Delivery, drive-through, and dine-in.
Can't wait.
Okay, so then we'll move on to item B, which is discussion and possible action on defining small, medium, and large in the Ripon area fire district's fee schedule for fire inspection.
So that, the department, as I think you're all aware, has a fee schedule for fire inspections. Prior to August of 2022, the structure, the fee schedule defined the square footage of buildings. So you divided it by square footage. It was changed in August of 2022 to the word small, medium, and large. That has, I think, created a lot of frustration in the community because I've fielded several phone calls on behalf of questions about why I pay this year or this different amount. So it's our recommendation that you go back to a defined square footage to reduce any estimation or any sort of, what small to me may be large to you. And so that creates discrepancy, and I did talk to several businesses that called and had questions that I think that would clarify in the future their question. It would make it clear why they're paying what they're paying.
I wonder if they changed that because, you know, the only way you really know what square footage is if you take two people and measure the darn thing off.
That's what we're gonna have to do, or get the assessor to give us that data. That's what we're working on now. Yeah.
So you're saying that's how it was previously, and then it
Yes, and
was
I think we
changed?
changed that
Yep.
with the recommendation from the previous fire chief to make it easier and to collect more money, I think it was.
Yeah, it created, I know I've had several phone calls with business owners that had, I think, valid questions.
It's too unclear, but
Yeah. So I think that would be, that's our recommendation, is you go to, and we use 1 to 25,000 square feet, 25 to 100, and then greater than 100 as the demarcation for those groups.
The only thing you're looking for a motion for is just adding a clarification of the square footage.
Yeah, so changing small, medium, and large to those 3 categories there.
I'll move to approve. Do you need me to spell that out? Move to approve adding the square footage definitions into small, medium, large for fire inspections.
Okay, do you want to put in, did you put in the square footage?
I did, I can't. Move to approve adding small 0 to 25,000 square foot, medium of 25,001
Right.
to 100,000, and large greater than 100,001.
Here we have a motion, we're looking for a second for this definition for square footage for the fire, the fee schedule for fire inspections. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Barry. So we have a motion on the floor to just add the definitions for square footage for small, medium, and large businesses from 0 to 25,000 square feet, 25,000 to 100, 25,001 to 100,000, and then large for 100,000 and over. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say same sign. Thank you.
Technically, we should have asked for discussion, and I guess I was just gonna say, you did say that's pretty typical among the field. That's the recommendation that you just gave,
The
correct?
square footage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to our other Kevin, who does inspections all over the state, and that was his recommendation,
Okay.
to use those categories, based on his experience.
Okay, so moving along, we look for approval of purchase for the additional ESO software module that Robert has talked to us about earlier.
Yeah, so this is, I think it can be done within the budget. I just was unclear as to the policy so I wanted to get approval to make this purchase, because it's not specific to anything that was in the budget when you approved it.
it needs to be.
So
Yeah.
by purchasing this, as you had mentioned before, we just made all of our record keeping much more efficient.
Right. And make the end result when the state comes back a year from now and says, show me all your records. You got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So does anybody have any more questions, or is anybody?
What was that price, so we can put it in the?
Yeah, I'm gonna just check because the vendor and I have been back and forth bargaining a little bit.
28.98.
So I want to make sure my number, so that number in the memo is an old memo. So his number, his most recent number is the, I'm trying to get to here, this one. 2890 plus a one-time setup fee of 950.
$2,890
Right.
plus 900.
50 for the one-time setup and training of the staff.
And does that 950 gonna come up again next year?
No, that's a one-time.
One time.
Okay.
But the 2890 is every
Right,
year.
yeah.
So the total will be 3740.
And so your commitment is year to year. So this isn't a contract that's like 10 or 5 years you're gonna do this. Every year you would renew. So next year when you approve your budget, would build that into, it's a one-year deal, is how they do their software deals.
You scratch it every time until you hit your 2% audit and you fail, and then you bring it back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Jonathan, just for everybody else, Jonathan was just joking. Just to be clear about that.
Yeah.
And this is gonna come from what?
There's
area?
I'm sorry,
I think it's a
Trying to remember the
contingency
account
fund
names.
and
you have there's an account, I think it's called professional services. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Really,
So, Harry corrected me, the total for this would be 3040.
Did you just say it's 37?
I did, but it's actually 38.
Oh, okay.
So the 2,500 or whatever we paid already came out of the professional services.
Yeah,
part of
that's
that
been
money.
paid already, yeah. Or is in the process of invoicing. I don't know what
okay,
their schedule
now,
is.
I have a quick question about this. When we renew, are we renewing everything at one time? Or we have to renew one and then, because we've already started with ESO already.
Yeah, you have a full year contract for your current
Right. And so,
software. This is a full year. I will ask them to prorate it.
that's what I'm getting at, because I think it would be better if we paid it all at one time.
Yeah,
And that,
and then get you
oh,
on-
I forgot,
Get you on a one-year schedule. So
for everything together.
I'll talk to him. So if you would, I would recommend the motion not to exceed that amount, because I could potentially see if they'll prorate it, and we start, let's say, March 1st, or a day that they're gonna turn it on, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I think that's just better for record keeping and for the invoice paying that, we paid it, oh, why are we paying it again, and then not paying it, and then not getting the access, and then oops,
Yeah.
that's a mess.
So if you want to do not to exceed, and then I will ask them to prorate it, and see what they're willing to do for that.
Okay. Okay, so what's the motion?
Waiting for one.
Well,
All right, I'll make a motion that we purchase the additional ESO software modules not to exceed the cost of $3,840.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the additional purchase of ESO software up to $3,840. Is there any discussion? If none, I ask for a motion, vote of those in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
I know they have the one-time setup fee in there. Does that include they'll like come and teach you how to
Training.
how to run it? That's
Yep.
all in that setup fee.
Yep.
I'll move on to item D, approval of purchasing policy for Ripon area fire district.
Cover that. So I think it would be good to have a written purchasing policy. So back to some of the ESO discussion here. I could potentially purchase that out of the amount that's in the budget. It's approved as a large dollar amount in that professional services. So I just wanted to make sure my bases were covered to get an approval for a purchase, because most places, most departments that I'm accustomed to in places usually have a policy that says if it's budget approved and it's under X number of dollars, the chief or the administrator can just go do it. If it's over a certain amount, even if it's in the budget, you have to come back to the board for approval, and there's a policy, like sometimes it's, you have to get 3 bids for purchases, or there's all sorts of different ways communities and municipalities go about that. So I think it would be best practice for the board to adopt the policy, which would provide direction for the chief or whoever's here in the future to say, okay, this I have to get your approval for, this I have the approval if it's already in the budget, and then there's not a question that what or who can use things for what. So that draft policy is recommended language. It's not anything that, this is recommendation. If you have something you want to change as a board, and the dollar amounts, the process, I'm well open to that. It's your comfort level of how you want to do business. So it's agended that you could approve it tonight, or if you want to look at it and come back next month and approve it, you could do that also. Generally, it puts a threshold at the fire chief can do a certain amount, whenever it's necessary, to get supplies, contractual services to be purchased, which costs more than $1,000. The approval board has to approve it. So even though it's coming out of a line item that is, let's say, has a $40,000 budget, if someone's going to approve a purchase of $1,050, that would have to come back to the board for approval. But under that, if it's budgeted, the chief could execute that purchase. Non-budgeted items, any non-budgeted items would have to be approved by the board because it's amendment to your budget. And then it puts competitive quotes at anything exceeding $10,000. And there's references in there to competitive proposals. The board may award purchase of supplies, offering the vendor offering the lowest or best bid, taking into account price, availability, reliability, warranty, uniform. So it doesn't require you to have to go with the low bid. It also gives preference to local vendors if all other things are equal. And I think that's important to have. There's a definition of capital items and how that would be handled in number 10. And then number 11 is public construction. That is the state statute. There's really no getting around that for public construction projects. That's just restating what's in the statute today. And then 12 requires board approval for grant applications and then acceptance. And federal funds, there's federal law about how you use federal funds, so it's just referenced in there also.
Actually, it says that the fire chief will approve all grant applications, so that sounds like there's a change. Previously, we had, the board will approve all grant applications.
I think
That's for matching funds.
matching funds that do not require matching funds.
Right, but like today, we didn't need matching funds, and the board approved it.
To accept it,
Yeah.
but this is to put the application in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So anytime you would, if the chief had a grant that you'd say, hey, you need 10% match, before the application would go in, it would require
Yes.
the board to say, yeah, we're on board with that if we get the grant.
So this was something we did not have in place before?
Did not.
We did not have a purchasing policy in place up until now.
I'm not aware of one.
That's the way we did it though, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may have been an unwritten policy. Yeah.
Best to have it written down.
Agreed. Well, thanks for bringing this forward.
So, what is the feeling of the board? Do we want to digest this a little bit more, or are we ready to move forward and accept what is written here, or do we want to make some changes to it?
I think just let it percolate for a month. We could bring it back as an agenda, an action item next month. Perhaps we want to think about it and just kind of look. I think it's good, but I want to maybe digest it a little bit. I have a little bit, but we have something written down. I just, maybe we want to just, 1 month is not going to kill anybody.
So I guess, do we need to have a motion to table it and bring it back for next month's agenda, or do we just not take any action on it at all? Or?
I have a different view on it. I understand that we've been operating without having this, so one could say 1 more month isn't going to, in your words, kill us. But from what I read here, it seems like, I was just hearing that there was some desire to make sure we have more transparency. And, you know, seeing that there is some guidelines of what should get approval or what doesn't need approval, being we're in this time frame, I can imagine that this would provide some necessary guardrails and also just some clarification that would be welcomed. For me, nothing seems controversial here. We're putting in reasons why we would want approval as a board. If anything, this seems like something immediately, in my mind, we would want to put in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, if we, after we look at this more, we can change this in the future, right? A policy can be changed in the future at a future board meeting.
And we'll have it done.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
That's just my thought.
okay.
And you're bringing this forward because clearly also it seems like other departments might have something
Yeah,
similar.
it's, municipalities generally have a purchasing policy.
Yeah, we have
So,
one.
yeah, and it also addresses some concerns that could come up in the next two items that I asked to have on the agenda, which are creating some challenges with purchasing supplies and goods because the credit card account that was here is not active anymore. And I understand that there's concern regarding potential that, so I wanted to make sure there was a policy in place to resolve any concerns so we could move forward, because not having that is creating some challenges in getting supplies from vendors. Because the world operates, and I operate my personal life probably more than I should on Amazon, and that's how you have to get some things today to get them in a timely fashion. So, and you have either a choice of credit card or invoice on Amazon when you have a business account, and it's easier to handle that with a credit card than manage the invoice process they have. So the next two requests, I would say, if you want to defer the purchasing policy, I would defer those next two tonight also. I think we can go a month. If you're willing to approve the purchasing policy, that provides, I think, some guardrails for use of an Amazon account and a credit card.
I'll move to approve the purchasing policy as laid out, 1-017, effective today.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion to approve the purchasing policy laid out in front of us on 1-017. Any discussion, any more discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Move on to item B, the credit card.
Yeah, item E would be approval to move forward and on behalf of the department, get a new credit card account opened to use for purchases that are under the purchasing policy or the approval of the board. So we could use that to purchase general supplies that are needed and eliminate also some of the reimbursements to personnel that are purchasing things on their own credit cards at different places and then asking for reimbursement, which then creates some challenges in managing all that, and there's tax being paid on some of those purchases, whereas this, we could just direct purchase and not, and be tax exempt from the vendors. So it's probably a small cost saver, just because you eliminate some of the tax purchases you're doing through your reimbursement.
Makes sense. Record keeping alone would be much simpler than.
So I would seek to find some vendors, credit card vendors. It would have to be open under the responsible party of the board, and then have approved users of that credit card. So like what we're finding with the Elan card is Ellen, as the board president, would be the account holder, so to speak. And then there are cards assigned to people, and that would be up to the board. At this point, I would just get one card to limit use. and then manage as needed moving forward. So we'd have to apply, get approval, just like you do in your own life when you apply for a credit card account. This would just allow us to start moving that process forward.
So I mean, hypothetically, if Heather was here full-time as captain, as the administrative position, that role then could be in charge of that card.
That's how I would look at that.
See that, and anybody needed that would come and get it.
Right.
So there's one person. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't have a vendor name yet because there's different options that you would probably want to explore. I know there are some credit card vendors that focus on municipal government entities that we would probably seek out first, that are a little more friendly to that type of operation.
And the alarm cards were closed, right?
So we are having, the cards are, there's no purchases being made on those cards. But because the account was in the name of 2 former employees, we've had trouble communicating with the bank because none of us are those people. And from a positive standpoint, they have good security of fraud, probably fraud detection, because we've, I think between Ellen and Heather and I, we're on about our 3rd back and forth, sending forms with different signatures on them for them to verify who we are, to just get access to the old records, to find out, to get the statements. So it would be a, I guess the process would, we just need to move, you guys move that forward. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does.
Yeah.
It's in process.
Yeah,
To get it.
yeah.
So you're looking for a motion?
Motion to allow basically Ellen, she would, as the board president, to, and we would do the legwork for her, but work toward opening a new credit card account to make purchases for the department.
Yeah, so,
So if there's a motion and a second, that would give us the direction to go ahead and start that process.
I make a motion to open a credit card account for the fire department.
A second.
there's been a motion and a second to open a credit card account for the department. In the direction of the board president. Any discussion, any more discussion?
So are you gonna go to different vendors? I mean, even Amazon itself has a, credit
Right.
card. And then are we authorizing with this motion that you just go ahead and make the decision, or are you gonna bring back those
I think we
ideas?
can make a
I
decision.
would go to Ellen and look at, the US Bank or whoever else is out there that has a general government P card, or they have different programs.
So do we need to be more specific in our motion, just to give the authority to the board president to make the final decision, or?
We just did though.
Okay.
Didn't I say that?
Yeah, board president, I think is what he said.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Any more? Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item F, the approval of opening an Amazon business account for the department.
So this, again, is seeking approval to do that. There are, the department currently uses generally local vendors, and I think that's a positive practice to continue, but there are things that, we have, like I said, there's people that are driving to Appleton or Fond du Lac to bigger stores to buy, and then there's these reimbursement issues that you can go online and have delivered here, and it may be a more cost-effective way to do things, and there's also some supplies that aren't available locally. They're not common, but things that you can't get locally, and Amazon gets them here the next day type of thing, on a delivery type of basis. So I don't see this as a regular, like, we're gonna buy everything on Amazon, but it gives some options for some of the bigger, the Halloween candy that, things that, or something that someone's going to Sam's Club to buy now. And you gotta go to Appleton or Fond du Lac to purchase, or some of the office
They weren't
supplies.
requesting mileage though, were they?
No, it just gives them, it's one less thing for them to have to drive to.
Or if they were
Appleton.
going anyways?
Yeah.
Maybe they. maybe
The
they-
other thing is, it's just another reimbursement.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just simplifies the record keeping. If
Right.
we could keep everything together.
So, because I don't use either one.
Yes, I know, Gary.
What is the advantage? We've already got one credit card. You can't use that credit card at
Oh, this is
any time?
not a credit card. This is an account
just
just
an
to buy.
account.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, you're
just an
setting
Amazon
up an
account,
Yeah, right, yeah.
a business
Yeah.
account.
A business account.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It'll already be set up tax exempt
Yeah.
already in here.
They let you go in there and you set it up and it's all, you
Yeah.
put your tax
Okay.
exempt in there and everything.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to open an Amazon business account for the fire department.
A second.
Any more
Explain
discussion?
it.
Any more
They do have a
discussion?
credit card, but that's not what the request is for. Yeah.
Any more discussion? Okay, so there's been a motion to open an Amazon business account for the department. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
That's what I get for not reading accurately.
So is there any general board discussion, communication you guys want to bring up?
I had given you a letter, an anonymous letter that came to the board, if you would read that, so it's in the record, Mike.
For, to save your voice, do you want me to, you want me just to read it for the record? That's fine.
Yeah, I guess I was just disappointed that they didn't put a name to it, so I was gonna just ignore it.
Well, I think we've had a problem in the past with the board not being given information that's been sent to the board. And although it is an anonymous letter and it is a nasty letter, it was sent to the district board. And so I believe that should be read into the record.
Okay. Robert said he would help me out with that.
So, it's open letter to Ripon Area Fire District Board members dated January 30th of 2023. I and other firefighters are extremely disappointed in recent comments and conduct of RAFD Board President Ellen Sorensen and others, which apparently hastened Chief Saul, Deputy Chief Sabel to suddenly retire, and Captain Markle to resign. RAFD Board approved a forensic audit requested by the Board President at your last meeting. This audit request appears to be related to the loss of leadership in RAFD. This audit has created the public perception of financial mismanagement directly related to these retirements, resignation, and possibly others in RAFD, ? Board President Sorensen has publicly stated the board was aware of the auditor's recommendation to tighten fiscal controls for the last 2 annual audits. This while Chief Saul and his administration have followed financial past practices with few issues to our knowledge under board review and approval with oversight until now, ? The sudden loss of RAFD leadership has created a serious issue. No one was apparently in charge of fire department operations after the retirements of the chiefs until outside consultants were brought in several days later to fix this mess. There are concerns when the board president announced she was in charge when an officer was directed not to handle a routine fire department request. Did other board members approve the board president running the fire department ? Why wasn't an interim chief appointed from one of the remaining officers? RAFD board members need to be transparent with regard to the forensic audit to clear the black clouds over the head of chiefs and others in RAFD. If there is a problem, fix them going forward instead of finger pointing. Please listen to your firefighters. There now exists a loss of trust and respect with the board over the handling of these issues and other decisions made recently. Your main priority must hire or promote your next fire chief and his or her leadership team. Concerns have been raised about the commitment and competency of former firefighters with no recent training or activity joining again with your approval. Conducting a strategic plan now without a new chief and leadership team does not make sense regardless of your consultants' opinions. Our AFD firefighters will honor Chief Saul, Deputy Chief Sabo, and Captain Markle for their many years of commitment to public safety in our community. Our team knows well the improvements to firefighter and community safety under their watch. Our wish is that the board agrees with us and we can move forward after this unfortunate situation for the sake of public safety in the Ripon Area Fire District. And it is unsigned.
So move on.
Move on.
Get right into the minutes and move on. Everyone sign it. That doesn't really warrant a discussion, I don't think.
No,
Okay, so for item 10, for future agenda items, I did put in the combi tool that Robert talked about with the addition to the fire subs grant. That can be brought up at next month's meeting, what we want to look into doing that. Is there anything else that we
I
can put?
guess my only comment would be, it kind of ties in with the option 1, 2, and 3 anyway, and maybe we talk about that next one anyway, but to talk more about the potentials for the interim chief. Like if there are candidates here
Sure.
that we would actually like to consider, or if that would be totally irrelevant, we should just be looking elsewhere.
We can do that.
We also have, Ellen, I'd already stated the update on the forensic audit will be always included in the agenda. And I'd like to include always, either in the administrative report or somewhere else, always an update on morale. I just think that that's so important right now.
Probably be another anonymous letter. We can gather the morale from that letter.
Anything else? Our next regular meeting is not February 7th, but March 7th at 7 o'clock.
Mine says March 7th.
I think it's March 7th.
Mine said February 7th.
There were 2 agendas that came out. So there was one and then another one, like back to back on days, so.
Maybe that was the one
Might have
that
been the
I
one.
printed this one off ahead of time and then put it
I
on.
know, yeah. We're in a leap year, so 7th is
So I wasn't
the
gonna.
second Tuesday of, or however that works. Someone explained it to me today. I couldn't figure it out.
Well, this isn't a leap year.
Somehow this year, the first is, I don't know, it's always, the 7th is always the second Tuesday or something he was explaining to me because of February. I don't know.
Leap year is different, because leap year is 29 days in
I
February.
figured it wasn't worth my time to go study this, so I just listened to what the guy said.
All right.
So I look for a motion to adjourn into closed session.
I'll move to adjourn to a closed session.
I'll second that. You're looking for a second.
I am. So there's a motion and a second to adjourn into closed session. All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then. Right now we'll be in closed session.